Thanks, Ellie. Thanks for doing that. um, so, good afternoon, everyone, and happy Friday. We are really pleased to have you join us in our latest Virtual Worlds Education Consortium series. I do want to let you know that this will be it's being streamed, and I've put the stream link into the chat if you would like to see that. It will also be posted on the VWECE YouTube channel, and I have put that also into the chat. And also, and in addition, if there are if there are questions, you can type them into the chat. I will keep track of them as we go along and ask the questions at the end. So I'm very pleased to announce to introduce Kay McLennan, also known as Kayako Mayako. She's a professor at the She's a professor of practice at the Tulane University School of Professional Advancement. Kay has been creating virtual world learning simulations to use in her online economics and business studies courses since 2008. Kay uses student feedback to continually refine and expand the educational simulations she creates to use in her e-courses. She has written about online course quality enhancement and the role of online coursework in an institution's emergency management plan. Kay's Prisoner's Dilemma and Data Detectives game, Virtual World Simulations, won awards in the Federal Virtual World Challenge international contests in 2012 and 2013. And she continues to present and publish her applied research findings on the most effective use of virtual learning simulations in online education. Kay's first digital campus simulations were built on 2 islands in Second Life. She now maintains a smaller premium membership property in Second Life and a private 4-island SOPA metaverse grid in OpenSim. So I would like to turn this over to Kay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Marie, and thanks to everyone for your interest. I am using the speakeasy, and what I'm trying to get through today, get to, is the link to the Mentimeter poll that I'm using. Well, I guess I've gone too far. Let me go ahead and advance. If you go to mentimeter.com, if it's easier for the slides to res in a separate browser window or on a smartphone, you can go to www.menti.com and use the code 73652971. The agenda, or what I thought would be useful to talk about today, is what I started off with, which is asynchronous virtual world learning simulations, and then address the pandemic paradox that I experienced in bringing students in during the pandemic. The future of virtual learning, which I believe is going to include a lot more synchronous virtual world learning simulations. Also, I enjoy using virtual worlds to create course content and expanding my use of course creation techniques. And then I thought it'd be fun to look at Open Simulator and Second Life affordances. I think they have some joint affordances. I think each platform has separate affordances, and then move on to the outlook for virtual world learning simulations. Again, that code should be in the chat, but I don't know about you. My slideshow isn't rising very fast. So as Marie said, I started creating learning simulations in Second Life. I used and tested these simulations with the college students I teach. I moved to Open Simulator in 2010, not coincidentally at the time that Second Life announced the end of the Teen Grid and the educator discount, I guess at least for a period of time. I continued to expand my holdings in Open Simulator to 9 islands. But then the pandemic took a big toll on my students, and I stopped asking for funding for SOPA's big 9-island grid, and I tested a couple of VR headset-based platforms, and my students didn't like them and wanted to go back to virtual simulations. So I came back to Second Life this year. I was interested in finding my 3D handouts in my Horizons Pro RISR, and sure enough, they were there, plus everything else that I had been working on. It's kind of like a time capsule, and I've just launched a smaller private grid in OpenSim. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about what I have found to be preferred by students and then not useful. In the realm of my Economics for Non-Majors course, students like the economics slideshow resources and other note card and web-based resources, things that I actually added to my simulations as filler to start. Students liked Meet the Economist, information about Nobel Prize winning economists, the Wizard of Oz monetary policy diorama. The one game that is very simple and quick to play is The Prisoner's Dilemma that I created. And then also students like 3D economic models. What they didn't like was my Data Detectives game as being too involved and too time consuming. I'm not sure where I'm at in, okay, I guess it's pretty close. They also didn't like the free trade game where they had to put together a widget, build some items together. And they also didn't like the problem solver, which was too difficult to manipulate and needed a lot of bandwidth. Moving on to the Economics of Health and Wellness simulation that I built, students really liked the vocabulary flashcards. It really wasn't anything special, just the vocabulary word on a poll that gave them a note card with the definition. Again, originally filler, but has become the mainstay of the simulations that I offer to students. They liked Timeline, which I built for the adoption of the Affordable Care Act and subsequent changes to the legislation. They, again, in-world slideshows, all links to different media and explanatory note cards, and again, smaller segmented builds. Unfortunately, the negative aspects of the health economics builds was that the whole build ended up being really prim and mesh heavy, and I'm also still working out what types of content is going to produce the best diorama displays in the international health comparisons. I built 4 little mini country scenes or dioramas, one for Great Britain, Germany, Canada, and Japan. All 4 countries spend significantly less than the U.S. and get significantly better health outcomes. But right now it's just slideshows and some text, floating hover text on invisible cones that I've put around the build. Let's see. Somehow, I'm so glad that I've got my slides simultaneously in Mentimeter, because I don't know how you're seeing them. They're not showing up on my end. So moving on to the managing organizational behavior simulations for this course. Oh, good. Thank you for the heads up. I've built out a number of case study dioramas, and there's in-world TED Talk video clips, there's an effective leader display, and again, slideshow and vocabulary resources and knowledge checks. What's not useful is role play. Wherever I've built non-player characters, which is one of the differences between OpenSim and Second Life, I've built empty sets for students to do their own role play checks, but no one likes to do the role play. And then the final course that I've built different simulations in is business ethics, and students are really keen on gender in the workplace resources and case studies. Again, the different case study dioramas that feature a lot of non-player characters for all of the case study characters, if you will, and also role play. But nobody likes the role play. So, moving on to what happened during the pandemic, I had asked for some feedback through a Hypergrid Business article or posting or advertisement to find out what educators and others thought would be their usage right after we started the lockdown. And everybody thought that they would be using virtual worlds significantly more, and I will confess that I was one of those folks. However, in reality, my average undergraduation participate rate dropped from 33% to 10%. And the reasons for that, as told to me by students, was that they lost jobs and had to cut back on schooling. They became sick, and had to quarantine. Also, there was a lot of Zoom fatigue, being all online all the time, and time constraints, including more in-home childcare that had to be provided, and then just general stress. The bright spots during the pandemic were the one graduate course I taught, a Foundations of Online Pedagogy and Practice, where the graduate student participation rate was 58%. That was like an all-time high for any course. I offer up simulation as optional. Students aren't required. But students' experience with on-ground classes that were now newly taught in Zoom motivated a new interest in real-time sessions in formerly asynchronous online courses, which to me was really kind of a sea change. Go ahead here. So that's what motivated me to come back into Second Life. I had all of these 3D handout desks that I had created, and I wanted to take a look at them. They were in my Horizons Pro, and when I took it out of my inventory in Second Life on a sandbox island, it didn't work quite right. And believe it or not, the creator of that object, Cheshire Constrain, came over and met me in the island, in the sandbox island, and gave me a new version of it. So it was really a lot of fun to go through all of my educational builds from 10 years ago. It was like a time capsule. As another ongoing use for virtual worlds, I continue to use, another motivation, I should say, for coming into Second Life was to get the sandbox space via a premium island. premium membership so that I could have access to the sandbox islands. I've used it to create lecture materials, to set up content images that I then take into my online courses, and more. And I've been having a lot of fun going around to all of the fabulous builders in Second Life, looking for different skybox builds to take apart. So taking a look at what I think are the joint affordances of Open Simulator and Second Life is the continued high immersive feature, voice and chat communications. Now that I've been in a number of VR applications, boy, Second Life has better resolution, more dimensionality. The in-world building tools are just, exactly what somebody like me that changes their mind about the builds and experiments needs. Enables rapid prototyping and is viewer-based, so no dollar outlay for students. And there's even some VR headset access, and I sure would like to learn more from folks that have tried out the Firestorm VR headset. The other thing is that everybody gets an avatar. I had received a classroom grant to get an Oculus Quest, and I was eager to try Facebook's workrooms with my students, but boy, what a disaster. The ad for workrooms said that only one person needs a headset in order to bring in a group into a workroom. So I was real excited about that. Well, it turns out that only the people that have headsets get avatars. So it didn't even work as well as Zoom, but all of my students zoomed in. Their video stream was what came into the workroom. And here I was sitting with this googly-eyed avatar as the only avatar in workrooms. I count it as a bit of a disaster, quite frankly. Since I've been back, I think there's some features that are unique to Second Life. I was just absolutely blown away by the high-resolution mesh avatar choices that are built into the Second Life viewer. Boy, what a development. Again, that was a nice surprise for me. There's continues to be extensive content available on the marketplace and also in shops around Second Life that the quality of it is exquisite. But of course not much in the way of education-specific content. I also believe the premium membership is an affordable way for educators to learn about the platform. A house and sandbox access available through the premium membership enables content creation and experimentation, and possibly even meetups that I've with built, students. Different. I think the extensive simulations in is business ethics, adult content that's in Second Life is a deterrent to bringing students in. Another negative is the high cost, and of course, for educators that don't have access to a lot of funds, the fact that all of the content stays in Second Life is, I think, problematic. I'm going to catch up here with... All right. Turning next to what I believe is unique to Open Simulator, the fact that I can set up private grids. Where nobody else can come in, and only avatars with certain permissions can hyperjump out, means that I can use students' real names, and also I can pre-create avatars for students. This was really the number one thing over the years that has increased my student participation rate. I can pre-create avatars, locate those student avatars right in front of the simulations I want them to experience, load up their avatar with landmarks and note cards, all the materials they might need. If it's something that's of interest, I could open up the grid for hypergrid field trips, free image uploads, the fact that I can save OR files, I can duplicate all of my island builds. There's an abundance of open source content available, and it keeps getting better and better. Again, all of the builds can be saved through OR files, or my avatar's inventory can be saved with an IAR file. Low-cost third-party hosting options, and then owing to the low cost, virtually no limit on land or prims. To expressly highlight student feedback, students always favor optional learning simulation activities. I would love to hear from somebody that has gotten a whole class into a virtual world. It seems as though my students, some of them are using Chromebooks and different devices that don't really enable it. But at the same time, it's worthwhile. It's enrichment for some of the highest achieving students. When I moved from Second Life to Open Simulator, the participation rate increased from about 10% to 33%. And with the exception of that one graduate course that I mentioned, has stayed at 33% for the entire 10 years I've been in Open Simulator. And then, of course, it did dip down again with the pandemic. Students like pre-created, pre-positioned avatars. Students prefer individual, short-use, streamlined simulations in comparison to longer narrative games. Not all simulations are valued equally by students. In a nutshell, students are looking for an advantage in terms of their understanding of the course content. What do they need to know that's going to be on the test and the graded deliverables? And whenever my simulations parallel questions that are going to be on a test, then that's when I get a high they get a high score from students. So again, and now that students feel gypped when they don't have webinars in their formerly asynchronous online courses, and I have 2 to 4 webinars in each of my online courses. I am so excited for this semester to be the first time I'm going to be able to use Zoom webinars to orient students and faculty to how to use virtual learning simulation. So I think that's like a sea change and breakthrough. And I have also, I'm going to use my virtual world learning simulations as kind of a walk-around screen share exhibits or PowerPoints that I'll walk around in and manipulate as I'm doing my webinars. I'd like to experiment more with my 3D handouts. I'm going to have to see if I can get students in for some sync sessions, and then continue to use these VW simulations as enrichment and to create course content. A really a fun experience has been relaunching a smaller SOPA metaverse. I now only have 4 islands, so I had to really pick what I was going to include in those islands. So I went for the auditorium that came from the University of California, Irvine's Universal Campus. I have multiple simulations for each class, and I don't know if you'll recognize the building down in the lower right-hand corner, which is the University of Edinburgh's open VUE, I believe is what they call it. And my city, I've got loaner classroom space for other faculty. I've eked out one building to see if anybody wants to come in. There's student galleries, there's faculty offices. I've got some tutorials and orientation spaces for both students and faculty. And then, students always want different fashions. I was thinking what my wish list would be. I don't have space for a sandbox island or extra islands to experiment with, but as you can see, I put the link to Outworld's Dream Land installation grid. So if I can somehow manage to set up my own mini grid on one of my computers, then that will take the place of having to pay for extra land. So I've got to report back on whether that's that's going to work or not. I've printed off the manual, but boy, it's looks like a lot of work. So I'll save that for a rainy day. So looking at the outlook for OpenSim and Second Life, one of the biggest impediments or barriers is how both platforms have so quickly been relegated to not being the it technology. I don't know whether a better integration of VR could save, or revitalize the public's interest in these technologies. I keep wondering whether virtual world use can benefit from the metaverse hype. And I think there also has to be some new direction in virtual world use. I don't know why it would be difficult to have a learning management system integration. Boy, if there was a viewer that could be embedded in Canvas and Blackboard, we would be home free when it comes to the educational applications. Again, better VR access. And I'm looking, I know that Second Life has talked about more streamlined browser and smartphone access. I don't know whether anybody has any thoughts about that. But we're getting close to where I sure would like an open discussion on what all of my esteemed colleagues think. What would it take to produce a viewer that could be integrated into the major learning management systems? I also wonder, it's a big disappointment to me that when I left Second Life, there was, I don't know if anybody has the exact number, but I would estimate there were about 250 different universities and institutions here. And, there's still quite a few, but it's a fraction of that. What would it take to motivate a return of a more robust educator community? Would educator-specific properties as part of a premium membership help? I've got a very nicely situated property that is set up almost like a classroom for my premium membership, but there's so much going on around my house in the other houses. I just can't imagine ever bringing anybody in, any students in. And anybody that has an idea of how close Second Life is to offering mobile access. So let me see if I can catch up here with my speakeasy. I think that's it. Yay. Sorry that my speakeasy didn't track what I was saying, but it was a good exercise for me to do that. Marie or Ellie or Valerie, were there any questions that I didn't see while we were going on? I'm ready to open it up for a robust discussion.
Sure. Yeah. There was one question in the chat that I will read from Ilsa Gutroon. I hope I didn't mangle that too much. Do you think that the lack of interest in the role playing was related to the actual role play choices themselves, or a play acting is for kids thought in the back of people's minds? I do trainings in real life for nonviolence. We have a problem with a lot of giggling during the hoped for role plays.
Forces. I think I, I'll tell you, Elsa. I don't know. My uh, impression was that it was once again something that was too
Minds.
involved
I do.
for students. Students are very busy, and this is of all ages. My traditional age students are taking 5 classes, and that's just a ton of coursework. And then the older students that I teach that may take 1 or 2 classes at a time, they might be working parents. So everybody is pressed for time, and there's no time for extraneous things. It's just getting the material that's going to help their understanding and their grade in the courses. So, but I can work with that. But the other thing, again, I have only tried this, tried bringing students into virtual worlds prior to having Zoom be mainstream. So I'll report back after I talk it up. Last night I took some faculty around the grid through a Zoom presentation, and then I watched the presentation that I made this morning. And while I rambled in a few parts, and I need to better coordinate what I do, I was very encouraged. I thought it all looked pretty darn good.
So there is some more questions in the chat now. Max asks, did you find a difference in responses between newbies and students that were more familiar with Second Life or other virtual worlds?
Quite frankly, I have never found a student in since 14 years. I've never had a student that has been into Second Life or Open Simulator before my class. I would be curious to find out, does anybody have students that know about the platforms? That's an interesting question. Sandra was in SL before she took a class here. Interesting. And I wonder, I'm also curious, what happened with the teen grid? If we still had the teen grid, supposedly we would be bringing along students that are familiar with Second Life. But I assume that was why it was ended, was because it wasn't popular. Sin Lear Lobo said most were not. Occasionally has one. Some in each class use MetaQuest. Lear, do they purchase it, or do they already have it?
They already had it, and I had one who was developing for it. I had no idea. He was developing within the Quest using Immersed. Yeah.
That's fascinating. Well, interesting. All of the VR applications I've been in, with the exception of Facebook's workrooms, give everybody an avatar, whether they join through a viewer or through the headset. But only Facebook is stingy about.
But didn't Facebook get rid of that even, and now they're just doing whatever it is, Horizons?
I don't know. I do know that one of the things that Facebook was originally doing was requiring folks to sign in using a Facebook account. and educators objected to that because of the privacy issues. I went ahead and gave them my Facebook account. I'm not.
So that actually went away, but now you have to open a Meta account, which they say is different.
Right, I still need to do that. Um,
So another question that kind of flew by is, I would like to find out if you would do tours of the simulations you have created, either here in Second Life or in OpenSim. I feel they would be good to see for people who are thinking of teaching in a virtual learning environment. And how do you do what is often a question that comes up? Concrete examples are always great.
I would be delighted. The easiest thing to do would be to do a Zoom session, but I would like maybe the best thing to do is if you have a canceled speaker with this group, we could just do a Zoom tour. Or, as a matter of fact, we've got Joyce and Sin here from the Open Simulator Community Conference. That's a good activity to do in concert with that. I assume everyone here is in both platforms? Is that both OpenSim and Second Life? Thank you, Sin. Both most are. Ilsa is a Second Life addict. I like that. I was just, at the time that the educator discount was ended, but it's back, right? Am I correct about that? That, if somebody were to have the funds to get an island, it would be half price? Or not? Yes, it's back. Okay, that's what I thought.
But boy, what a disaster.
And cheaper. Oh, how about that? Boy, but just getting one island. I can barely get by with just 4 islands. I don't know about having just one island. They're both the same in terms of builds and whatnot. But even if somebody is only in Second Life, I highly recommend the Open Simulator Community Conference. Joyce and Sin and the others that organize it do a fabulous job every year, and the presentations are worth seeing.
So did you see the question about have you ever done game-based learning in Second Life?
I have. I don't know if. When you said, when the question is asking game-based, my Data Detectives game was a game. It was a whole island-sized building, and I built tutorials around the perimeter of the building, and then there was a city built up in the middle, and so students had a narrative that they had a quest, if you will. There was a business question. Did this particular fictional product, should it be introduced in the city? And believe it or not, I built it the summer that the Olympics were held, the Summer Olympics in London. And so the city was called New London. And there's even a castle, and there was homage to the Queen jumping out of, the staged Queen jumping out of the airplane. So it's kind of a bit of classic stuff. But students found it too time consuming. So the Prisoner's Dilemma, which is a game of sorts. It's a question, something that they're interactive. It can, 5-10 iterations can be accomplished very quickly, and students enjoy that and get a lot out of it because it's, real-time immersed. But the longer games, they don't have time for that. Has anybody had success with longer term games or even, spanning a couple of weeks in a course?
So I'll speak up here. The reason I got into Second Life in the first place was because I was doing a library and information science degree at San Jose State University. And I took 3 classes here in Second Life, and they were all role play classes. So, for example, one was we had to take on a persona from someone from the Tudor Times, and we had to do research, and we had to like we went to dances that were where they were dances that would have happened that with the types of dances that went on in that time frame, and we did jousts, and we did all that kind of stuff. And what the thing for me was that I learned so much more from that experience than I ever would have from reading books.
I can believe it. And of course, the sense of immersion is just, can't be beat in either Second Life or Open Simulator. So, boy, I just got an idea. Uh, I have the Thursday, let's see, December 10th and 11th is the Open Simulator Community Conference. I can't do the educator meetup on the 9th, but I'm going to set up through Joyce and Cynthia Lear an educator meetup on the 8th, and then I'll add in a second activity to do a Zoom session, a Zoom tour of the SOPA Metaversity, if anybody would like to attend. And maybe there's some others. I'm sure there's others in this group that have simulations. I think Zoom is a great way to show somebody how to about a particular OpenSim or Second Life build. Again, it worked great last night, so I'm really encouraged. But believe it or not, there was usually, I give all of my students and faculty a full array of landmarks. They end up, underground if they just open up the map and move about by themselves. But when I had a Mentimeter poll opened, Zoom, and my viewer, I couldn't get the landmarks to work, but I was able to use the map. So that was just one of those strange things. What do we do to get administration to continue paying for ICARA?
That's what I was saying for Zoom. Like, if you want to show it off, but you don't want them to have to like create an account and come in and learn how to move around, we basically do a Zoom session where everybody joins a Zoom session, and then we jump in, whirl, and share our screens.
Exactly. That's what I was. So that would be a great way we could set up, and I'm going to talk with Lear and Joyce. We could do more than one grids. I'm sure there's lots of folks that have builds to share. And for example, Beth uses Zoom to show some of her colleagues Anne Frank's house in SL. I think that would be like a great activity for the upcoming OSCC.
So, I just had another question for you. So the data that you presented about your students, and especially those experiences that you had during the pandemic, is super interesting. And I'm wondering, I think a lot of educators would be interested in that. And I'm wondering, have you published your findings, or are you planning to publish?
The last my presentation last year at OSCC was more detailed with what I found, the feedback I got back from students.
Do trainings in
I'm not
real
sure
life
if
for
that's
nonviolence.
recorded,
We have a
Marie. I like early in the morning on the second day of the OSCC, and I think that the OSCC recorders are burnt out after the first day. But I will look and see if it's recorded, and I'll send you a link to it if that's of interest.
I also wanted to say that I tried to create my own open sim worlds, like you were talking about doing on my PC, though, where so that it's just running whenever when the PC is on. But I could not get it to work with opening ports, and I think it might have had something to do with Xfinity blocking those ports. I would be really, really interested in finding out how other people have overcome that, because I would like to do something similar to what you are talking about, and with having more than 4 islands that you're paying a lot of money for.
Agreed. I don't know if you have found the latest manual. I'm going to find it again first and then put it in the chat. Apparently, the installation plus the user manual was updated significantly recently. Here's a link to both the installer and the Dream Grid manual. This is interesting. I guess I keep forgetting that the SL viewer works better with the Mac. There we go. Here's a question. Beth, I'm sorry, I don't know what my OSCC presentation was called last year. I think it was called the Pandemic Paradox.
So we did have another question come through. Has anyone asked students if they find the larger community of Second Life to be a draw of distraction? With Second Life, there are so many things to see that you're bound to learn how to walk/run faster.
I would love to hear what others have to say about this, but I did make a mistake last fall and spring semester. I had just discovered the new mesh avatars in the SL viewer. And so on one of my mid-course surveys to my students, I asked them which avatar they preferred. I have a nice set of, different ethnicities and appearances and looks of avatars, but they're, kind of like second generation, where the mesh avatars are like 10th generation. And this is a lesson for teachers. Don't ask a question if you don't want to know what the answer is. But overwhelmingly, they just love the new avatars. So I think my students would like to come in to get these avatars instead of the ones that I provide for them. Although I will say they're supposed to be, the latest OpenSim installation does have mesh avatars. I haven't even started to look at those. That's something, Beth, with your professional workers, have you started getting into mesh clothes and avatars yet? Beth may have left.
I'm Beth Ghostraven.
Yes.
I'm right here.
Oh, good.
I'm just little today. I specialize in system clothing and classic avatars because I feel like mesh is just wearing a plastic shape. So I'm the wrong person to ask about mesh avatars. I was just wondering how easy you found to use them, because it seems like the classic avatars are easier for newcomers to use.
I personally haven't tried out a mesh avatar with my main avatars, both here in Second Life and OpenSim. But I've got all these alt avatars, and I don't know. I tried it with one of my alt avatars, and a couple times I logged in, and she was kind of naked, so it didn't really work for me.
That nakedness does happen. However, the kids do seem to prefer the mesh. There is a real easy way to make sure that nakedness doesn't happen, but that's a topic for another time. But it doesn't have to happen.
That's a good tip. I like hearing that about that. When I've been places, I think one of the first places I went after coming back into Second Life was one of the garden or festival, house shows or something. And there were so many people there, so many naked avatars. I thought it was like some sort of a game, to like a initiation to a fraternity or sorority. But then I realized that it was the mesh people. So
Actually, Beth has the answer to it for mesh avatars. Beth said she made system garments, and that's all you really have to do, because the system garments, everybody lands minus some clothes if they're mesh. They're going to be minus clothes. However, if you've got a mesh avatar, if you don't have any system garments, go visit Beth, and or you open your body, your body HUD that comes with your mesh avatar. You open the body HUD and you can blank out those sections of your body you don't want to show.
Oh, wow.
So when you land, all that's showing are your arms and your head and your legs, nothing else. So, and it's free. Now, what's nice is mesh bodies can adapt to the system clothes that Beth has, because it will help block things out. But both have got a good place in Second Life. And a lot of people go from mesh to bomb, and bomb bodies can wear classic clothes. The whole thing is, know that no matter what body you've got, you can cover all the private parts and not have those show when you land. It's just that people don't know, or they don't bother to do it.
That's fascinating. Yeah, I haven't even started to get into that yet. Interestingly, I think I mentioned the premium house. It only took me about 6 tries to get this fabulous house that's like up on a hill, not around anybody. I've got an open park next to me, an open space in front of me. But there's 2 houses that, I have some in my sight view. So I was really excited. One of them, I was just curious.
A problem with a lot of giggling.
Is in the house, as I was thinking about whether there was ever an opportunity for me to bring students in. I've got my house set up as almost like a classroom, and so the fellow behind me, the only thing that his Second Life profile says is F off, and then the fellow in front of me, boy, he had a whole lot of X-rated content in his house. And I was thinking, this isn't going to work. But, there's nothing for me to do. I just went about my business. And I noticed a little bit later on that he had left. And I wondered if, he looked around and thought, oh my gosh, look at that person's house across the street. What a square. I got to get out of here. So it looks like whoever showed up next to be my neighbor is, more reasonable or moderate, I guess. But I've wondered, has Second Life ever talked about putting together communities of like-minded educators in the premium memberships? Has that ever been a possibility? My guess is that Second Life wouldn't want to do it. Because it would be cumbersome, but I don't know. Yeah, it would take a lot of coordinating.
You can rent mainland land with your premium account that is not in a Second Life neighborhood.
Are there any educator premium lands?
Now, there's nothing designated for educators. You're welcome to rent the parcel next to mine if you want.
I've got this premium parcel, and I think I ran off the guy that had the X-rated content. So yay me.
So I just wanted to point out we have 3 minutes left, and but we are going to stick around. There's some refreshments and stuff, and we can continue the conversation. And I wanted to. I think that this is a great presentation, and so happy you came to talk to us. I want to let everybody know that there is a Virtual Worlds Education Consortium general meeting on Wednesday, October 5th at 9 a.m. And yeah, let's give Kay a round of applause.
Thank you, everyone, for coming. Boy, what a great group. I enjoyed the discussion.
Whoops.
So let's continue the conversation. One of the things, Kay, that you said that another thing, I wrote a whole bunch of questions while you were talking. You said something about a Firestorm headset. Are they actually doing virtual reality in
Yes.
OpenSim?
It's the Firestorm Vr 6.6.3, and I don't know if you follow Austin Tate's blog, but I'm going to put the link in the chat here. He reviews and gives you a full tutorial on how to use the Firestorm VR headset. You have to scroll down in his blog here. I think it's the 4th story down. Talking about avatars, and it looks like it's the 4th or 5th story down. But he also talks about having an avatar that can be used in all the different grids. What is he? A Swift XR avatar that you can either Ready Player or Swift XR. He's got some fabulous blog posts.
That's interesting. I tried a while ago. My understanding was, where did I try this? I tried this on Kitely, I think. That there was one build that's a forest. It was supposed to be set up for virtual reality, and I tried it, and I could not handle more than 2 minutes in it because it was making me very cyber sick.
Interesting. I sometimes have gotten sick as well. I was in Internet 2 in their extended reality group, where for once a month we went to a different VR venue and looked at them. I think it was Rec Room that didn't have any stops on your motion. And oh my gosh, I was sick for about 3 hours. And then on top of that, I had just painted my home office, and somehow I was flailing around, damaging the wall.
Well, and I can imagine, were there still fumes too to make the
Pretty close. Let's see, Lear has a bunch of comments in here. You all are going so fast, I can't keep up. Okay, Lear has some tips. You have to orient, eat lightly, and start slow.